that this phrase that gets bandied about a lot has become I think sometimes what I'm looking for in a character of either or any gender, and unfortunately, it's the women who are most often shafted in this respect, is I'm looking for agency. So what that means is that I want the character to be a human being, or an alien, or I don't really give a fuck, but whatever. But they need to have something that they want. They need to have an interior life. And I think that what can happen with female characters frequently, and you can actually do this with any character, we just have a habit of doing it with women, is that you can rob them of that. You can make them into something that is just really a plot device or a motivating factor for another character. You know, I think some of you have probably heard me describe before something called the sexy lamp test. So if you can take a female character out and replace her with a sexy lamp, and your plot still functions, then fuck you. Wait, do we have children in the room? I'm sorry. Okay, the PG, yes, the PG version of that is, then you're a hack. So when I'm looking for a strong female character or a strong character at all, I'm looking for a character that has a purpose in that story, that has an interior life of some sort. And it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be physically strong, they don't have to be morally strong or ethically strong, because men and women come in a huge variety of all of those things. Emotionally, ethically, I'm less concerned with that. I just don't want them to be props. That's the only thing that offends me.
Okay. Very good. Anything to say?
I'd agree exactly with what Kelly said, and I think it does start with the writing. You know, we have to think of all these characters, we have to treat them all equally. We have to think about them having an interior life and having motivations. And so when I'm drawing female characters, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for subtext. I'm looking for ways to make the reader relate to them in a way that goes beyond just the pure aesthetic value. Just, you know, drawing an attractive woman really, you know, actually gets kind of boring after a while. You know, you want to have some mystery, you want to have some intelligence, you want to have some compassion for these characters, because if you lose that, then you start seeing people as objects. So, you know, for me, it's, yeah, I really need a good script.
Okay.
Yeah, with me, I guess I was really lucky coming into the strong female character, being with Joss Whedon, who probably is one of the best writers of strong female characters. But I wasn't a Buffy fan when I got into the series. And I was really disturbed when I read, because Joss was very cool about me just talking to him directly. And I was really disturbed in reading the script how much she gets beat up. And to me it felt like, you know, this woman being hit. But then of course he's like, well, consider, you know, she's more like Spider-Man. She has the strength. So when she gets hit, it's not like somebody else getting hit.
She hits back.
And she'll hit back. And I thought, still though, that just seemed to me, how do you illustrate that? Obviously she's strong because she has strength. And then I really got it in my head, and throughout the whole of season 8 that I did on Buffy, I was thinking in the back of my mind, there's a film, Tina Turner's biography, What's Love Got to Do With It, with Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne. And in the movie, I'm sure most of you know, she's an abused woman through most of her life from her husband. And there's a scene in the film where she finally fights back. She's just so tired of it. And they do have this fight, and she gets her ass kicked, but the next scene is she's wanting to check into a hotel, and she's just bruised and bloodied, but she's carrying herself like this woman, and she's asking the guy, I would like a room if that's okay. And that's when it struck me, is like her strength came through, not because she fought back, but with the idea that her coming to a place that nobody would know or would think, hey, what's wrong with you? she just is this woman who's carrying herself with such a sense of strength that I was looking at Buffy and putting that into her. So it's probably because of me that when you read season 8, Buffy is bloodied and beaten maybe a little more than is what is in the script.
For me, I just think that, you know, sometimes a strong female is She-Hulk punching a tank, and sometimes a strong female is a young girl crying, and there's everything in between. And I also would like to say that sometimes we need to think about things in terms other than this is female, this is male, this is a strong female, this is a strong male. We have a gender spectrum to tell stories about, and I think that's important to acknowledge as well. But I think that, for one thing, the reason why I'm doing something that I said when I first started in the industry that I would never do, which is write several single female lead characters at one time in different books, because I was so worried about getting typecast as the chick who could only write chick books. Well, I decided last year that I wanted to prove that we could have several books, you know, numerous books, with female-led characters where none of them were the same. Kelly Sue writes a female-led book where she's a pilot. Batgirl is completely different from the drunken, sword-wielding, sex-crazed she-devil. And, you know, Lara Croft is completely different from them, you know, as being well-educated and strong in completely different ways. Yeah. And that's the point, and the point I think Kelly Sue was making as well, that you just need to have your own motivations. They need to be non-three-dimensional. They need to look different. There needs to be variety. We don't want one body shape. We don't want one age. We don't want one hair length or color or any of those things. And that's what I think it takes to make a strong female character.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, I've had the question before about, like, aren't you afraid of being stereotyped? And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not. Like, the women are half of the population. Like that. I write a superhero team book, and I write a superhero solo book, and I write a weird western, and like, how am I being stereotyped? I don't understand that question, and I think that. You know, there was a study released in the films last year. Last year, the movies released in the United States, 30% of the speaking roles were female and 15% of the protagonists. So basically, at this point, I'm putting women forward just as much as humanly possible to try and even the scales.
Yeah.
You know?
So this question follows on because there's, you know, two of you are writers, obviously 3 of you are artists. There's a sort of, I think, fair to say, a degree of like need and, in a way, obligation to try and depict women in a stronger and better light than they have been in the past. So, with that said, how do you deal if you have on both sides of the spectrum, writer and artist, when the person you're working with isn't doing as much as you feel they could be doing, either with the imagination of their visualization or with the depiction of the character in terms of the script? And have you ever had to deal with that, actually?
Is that for all of us, or
just because it's writing artists.
I have on and off, just in terms of like when I create a new female character, I really put a lot of effort into creating something that we haven't seen before, and so that means a whole new design, a new way of thinking of you know, a visual look for a character. And when I created Scandal Savage, I wanted her to be very short, kind of you know, strong and it just like. And that's the way she was designed in the beginning, and just over time she gets taller, bustier, slimmer, more curvy, and so I'm like, remember, she's supposed to have this certain body type that we haven't really seen in, you know, 200 other female characters. So that does come up sometimes.
I had really big balls when I was doing Buffy, because I actually took...
Ovaries.
I took Joss to task a couple of times saying, I don't know if Buffy would do that. And, you know, it was like, well, here am I telling the creator what Buffy would actually do. But he actually, and to his credit, he actually listened and go, no, really, what do you think this would do? Or how would you think this played visually? And I really did have an input when it came to her not necessarily just going ahead and doing something, it was more what the motivation was behind doing that thing.
Cliff? You don't have to say it.
No, it's I've become really aware, I guess, of all the kind of subtle things that you can communicate through the art and how you're presenting a character. Particularly someone like Wonder Woman means so much to so many people. When doing, coming up with cover designs, you know, sometimes people will pitch ideas at me, the writer or the editor, and it's interesting because I know they're not trying to, but they end up pitching things that kind of feel like damsel in distress covers, where the tension comes from her needing to be rescued somehow. And it's something I immediately push back against. I realize that this is not what you're going to put on a cover with Wonder Woman emblazed on it, you know? She needs to be, she could be in trouble, but she doesn't need to be completely out of control. Like, so whenever I'm doing these covers, I try to make sure that there's an element where, even if there is danger, it's not something where agency is taken away from her. So, you know, there were a couple covers of her like tied up and this and that, and she's not on a railroad, you know, she's not on a train track, you know, someone, you know, twisting their mustache, but it's a look where you realize she's fighting back somehow, and that she is almost biding her time more than anything else. I want her to be powerful on these covers, and sometimes that's a quiet power, and other times it's a more bombastic power. But you know, when you're going to have a book out there that's called Wonder Woman and she's on it, you have a responsibility to put out a certain kind of image.
I've been in this business a long time, and I've never been known as a guy who draws attractive women. But my problem is I keep working with Greg Rucka, and he writes women pretty good. Fortunately for me, he has a way of defining character in very few words that gives me all I need. When we started Lady Sabre, I asked him, I said, okay, who is this woman? And he stopped a beat and he goes, she's fabulous and she knows it. Now, he could have said anything. He could have said she's wonderful, he could have said a lot of words, but he chose the word fabulous. And that just, it crystallized the character in my head immediately. I knew who she was. And strangely enough, the only work I've ever done for Marvel was She-Hulk for a year. I would be the last guy I picked to do She-Hulk. I did Jinx for Archie Comics, which is, you know, Jinx, it's teenage girls. So I find myself I keep running into these projects that have strong female leads, and I wouldn't pick me to do it. So I've got to find a way to make this work. And to do that, I just try to make them individuals and try to make them react to the situation they're in believably, not necessarily realistically, but believably, and there's a big difference there. And secondly, I draw the script. I try to enhance the script, and if you're working with a strong writer like Greg, if you just draw what's there, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know, I've been really, really lucky for the most part. I've been super simpatico with most of my artists. Every once in a while there's been a thing or two that's happened, and I think strategically placed word balloons can sometimes cover a multitude of sins. There's also, you know, there's the timetable that you're working on, like you can't, very often, art fixes are just not something that can happen, so it's like you just kind of have to work around it because of the reality of the 30-day schedule. And also there's a reality of like my place on the totem pole, where, you know, I can say, well, you know, I don't think the fact that I can see both of her butt cheeks and both of her breasts at the same time is really ideal. Like, yeah, well, it's inked, so we're gonna deal with it. However, I have a story for you. So I don't have the pull to get that kind of stuff fixed on a short schedule, but I just did an arc with Warren Ellis. And no one else on the planet could get away with this, because I think this is like harassment. But Warren felt like there was a depiction of Spider-Woman where she was, her waist was perhaps didn't contain any internal organs. And he suggested very quietly, and I wish I could do a British accent, because he's very genteel sounding, Warren. He's like, I can't do it. Well,
I can do it. You just don't know what
but I'm just going to tell you what he said. He said, he was like, yes, you should fix that, or else I will come to your house and nail your feet to the floor and set your house on fire.
Very good. Like you could have been my next door neighbor when I was 10.
All right, yeah, and it was it totally got fixed. So imagine that. I don't have the juice for that. I think I would actually get fired and maybe brought up on charges if I sent that email.
So my next question is sort of like a kind of a two-part thing, but it's really one question. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, that no matter how well you depict the personality and the heart and the intelligence and spirit of a woman, they still remain in these sort of idealized packages. And there isn't a superhero that looks like Patti Smith or Dorothy Parker or Whoopi Goldberg. Does that frustrate you? B, A, and then B, how do you see things improving in the future in terms of that? Obviously, people are becoming more aware of women in comics, both writing and drawing, and also the characters. But are there any other ways that you could see things improving even more in the future?
Well, more women are reading comics than probably ever. I saw numbers that say that 46% of comic readers are now women. That's a pretty good percentage, and I think that's going to have a lot to do. But I think you have to keep in mind that we deal in fantasy. You know, I don't want a superhero to look like me. But I think women have been sexualized much more than men have been, and I think they've been objectified a lot more. And I think if there's any progress to be made, it'll be in that area. I think we'll be seeing women who look athletic, obviously, but don't look like exotic dancers. It's just part and parcel. If we continue to do superheroes, and I can see no reason that will change in the near future, your protagonist is going to have to be athletic if they do athletic things. So there's that, but again, there's that line between believability and reality that you have to deal with. And plus, we're starting to see other genre being done in comics now, finally. And because there's a huge landscape between the superhero book and the avant-garde Vertigo type book that is wide open and we haven't touched much of in recent years. So yeah, I think with the change in the audience, I think that with new artists, new writers coming on board all the time, I think with comics actually kind of being respectable for the first time in its long history, yeah, we're gonna see a lot of change, and it's all for the good, I think.
I have some issues with a couple of those things, actually. I mean, I think that athletic build has a really wide breadth. I think that there are all kinds of different athletic women that don't. I think, and I don't mean, I'm not saying this is what you said. Let me be very, very clear about that. But this is a thing that creeps into this conversation a lot. Is
well, I hope you did, because I don't remember.
Okay, it's all good. But there's a thing where you know, if you complain about the depiction of women, then it becomes, well, but ladies, the dudes are idealized too. And the thing is that the dudes are idealized for strength, and the women are idealized for sexual availability. It's very, very different. The women's costumes are cut in such a way that that I could give a cervical exam to 90% of our heroines. And I don't have a degree. So if I can find it, that's impressive. But the thing is that there's a couple of things about that bother me. In particular, it bothers me because it assumes a heterosexual male reader. And when we say things like, there are more women reading comics now than ever, that's actually not true. It used to be that comics were pretty evenly distributed. Like, everybody read comics, right? And if you go back and you find old pictures of kids at the newsstands reading comics, girls, boys, everybody, there's this thing that happened in really fairly recent history where it became this accepted wisdom that comics were adolescent male fantasies, and that those were that was the readership that kept the industry alive.
Well, and that Archie was for girls and everything else was for boys. Mm-hmm. And that,
But that was only in the 1960s. Prior to that,
right.
Simon and Kirby did romance comics, and they sold in the millions every month.
Take a look at how the original characters of Lois Lane, Black Canary, and Wonder Woman were some of our strongest, most, best female characters, and then through decades of things happening to them, they just became weaker and weaker, and that doesn't appeal. It didn't appeal to the female reader anymore as much.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, that's okay. So the other thing, I mean, the other thing I have to applaud you for, obviously, one could say that it's easier for you to do this because you are women, but, I think back to even like Chris Claremont and John Byrne, I think, they kind of, in X-Men and also Fantastic Four, in fact, John Byrne was actually the first one to make Sue Storm Invisible Woman and give her real power, so she wasn't just going invisible and tripping people up or whatever that she did,
I like that idea.
so that's what she used to do, is hide.
I think there were a lot of girls reading comics then.
No, that's very true. But one of the other things that I'm aware has gone away, which you've definitely been a part of, is the flip side of that is if you did what was perceived as a strong female character, they were just sort of like angry bitches that just sort of like were unpleasant to everybody, and you imagine they wouldn't be very nice to hang out with, So that was definitely something, that's sort of a 70s thing, I think. And then with the evolution, I think people like you, I'm not asking a question, I guess I'm just saying something, aren't I? But people like you who have helped to take it to the next stage. So, brother.
Super bitches.
Yeah, super bitches. And while I've got the mic, let me also thank all the females in the audience for supporting all these great projects.
And the guys who love them too.
Yes. I've always thought Your Secret Six was one of the greatest comics ever, so that's something I've always said. What was I going to say? Next. I guess before we throw it over to the audience, let's just be personal here. What is the proudest moment of your work in terms of depicting women? Is there one thing that you go, wow, that was the beginning for me, or the best thing I've done, or something to that effect?
Oh, that is a tough question for me. When I first came into the industry and I was writing Simpsons comics and writing Deadpool, which, by the way, is one of the most testosterone-filled comics ever. And then I was given the opportunity to write Birds of Prey. I said, well, I'm going to prove that 3 female characters can work together, be in a book together, be entertaining and be successful without having bitch fights over boyfriends, talking about makeup and shopping all the time, talking about dating and who's going to date who, and going behind each other's back and dating the other one.
And only either eating salads or ice cream.
Exactly. Exactly. And that they were going to have missions and they were going to accomplish things and work together, even though they didn't agree with the methods all the time, but they were going to get it done. And I told Dan DiDio at the time, I said, I am going to prove to you that these female characters have value outside of just being, you know, the male hero's girlfriend or plot point once they get depowered or killed or whatever. And I think accomplishing that is probably the proudest thing that I would say. And then I've gone on to try to say we can have these female single-led books that are completely different from each other, and just in general try to make it a more variety and more friendly to more of a variety of an audience as well.
Yeah, with the female-empowered books. I'm sorry, go ahead. I think the thing I'm most proud of, and obviously it would be with Buffy, is that with this book, more than any other book I've ever done, I've had more women come up to me and say, I've never read a comic book, but as soon as I saw that Buffy was going to be in the comic book form, I had to go pick it up. And I thought that was great, and more, I would say 9 times out of 10, the women who did pick it up said, I then saw this, or I saw Fables, or I saw Catwoman, or I saw another book. And it was a very proud thing for me, at least, to be the gateway drug to this world that we all live in, obviously, because I'm a geek from way back, and you know, once you live in it, you don't see what the outside world is. It's only when somebody from the outside
you want everyone else to come in.
Yeah, you're like really happy. So that's been very, it still happens today. I did Buffy for 6 years, and I still get people coming up saying, I've never picked up a comic, but I had to pick this one up. So it's a great, great thing.
It's great how meaningful these comics are to people. I think it's easy as creators to kind of forget that because we get caught up in the commercial side of it. We're just making product. And but it's when we come to shows and we talk to people and we see the people who love these books that, you know, we regain that connection and hopefully, you know, haven't lost it, that connection with the material, so that we continue to make things that mean things to people. I've been lucky enough, it's not by design, but I've been working on actually mostly female characters throughout my career, you know, starting with, I think the Swamp Thing, Brian K. Vaughan. I did a one shot of that, and then I did some Josie Mack, which I co-created with Judd Winnick, which was just a female detective in Gotham City going, in a way, toe-to-toe with Batman and Two-Face. But I think the proudest moment in regards to creating female characters is working on Greendale with Josh Dysart, which the story of that is pretty much about a young high school girl who discovers she has strange powers and a very curious family history, and in unearthing that discovers her voice and that she needs to speak out against things. So by the end of it, she is becoming this activist against you know, oil drilling in Alaska, and that she's found that if she's going to do anything, she needs to speak up and she shouldn't be afraid. And I think that's a really great message, and it was great to do that book, and hopefully it did reach you know, the audience that I thought would, you know, that it was meant for.
I don't know. I don't know if it quite counts, but I curate a collection of superhero, mostly Captain Marvel and Spider-Woman t-shirts over at We Love Fine, and we donate a percentage of those sales to the Girls Leadership Institute. And we've actually raised enough money to pay room and board so a girl can go to leadership camp, and that could change someone's life. You know, that experience could really alter the trajectory of a young woman's life, and I think that thinking about who that girl is maybe is my proudest moment.
Fantastic.
Proud, I don't know, I think proud's not a word because I think of everything I do as a struggle that never quite gets to the point where I want it to be. But the fact that Greg and I have done Lady Sabre now for 3 years, and we find that the vast majority of our audience is female, and we have created a female character that we just made up, doesn't belong to a big corporation. We could have done anything we wanted. There were no restrictions, and we created a strong female character that female readers have responded to. that's a pretty good day for me. It's been a journey for both of us, I think. We've done a lot of things that we didn't know we could do. We published a book. I learned how to color on a computer. But at the end of the day, our female readers seem to really like her. And they're interested in her, and they want to see what happens next to her. One complaint we did have, we had one reader, and it was a male reader, by the way, who wrote in and said, "She smiles all the time. What's wrong with her?" And we were like, well, she's happy. She likes what she does. You know, but if you get that kind of response from female readers, you know, my work here is done. So, you know, you just wait and see what's next, but that's, yeah, we'll see.
So, with that said, I'm sure people have a few questions. We have time. Oh, you know what? I have a proud moment too. I wrote the Justice League for 2 years, and I had 4 female. It's a cast of 7. I had 4 of them were female. I forgot about that. Anyone have any questions? There's a microphone. No, you should get up and get a line, and there's a microphone right there. It's just go ahead.
Hi, panel. So I wanted to say the reason I was attracted to Gail, your work, and Kelly, your work, is that you took established characters. I'm thinking like Batgirl, Red Sonja for Gail, and Carol Danvers for you, Kelly, who had been, I would say, mistreated in the past. To use like Gail's Women in the Refrigerator project, they were women who were dispowered or put away broken, and you rewrote them to give them another chance at being amazing. And I wanted to ask everyone on the panel if there's a character like that, a female character you think that's been sort of mistreated that you think deserves another chance. Like, who is that? Who would you want to rehabilitate?
Donna Troy. There's a lot of weird stuff in the publishing history and the continuity, and I don't know what they would do to fix it, but I think, you could do something.
That's an awesome
answer, by the way.
There's so many. It's hard to even think of an example, and unfortunately, just because it's been done one time doesn't mean it's not going to need to be done again, because sometimes things happen where you've done a lot of work on this female character, and then you pass the baton, and it goes right back to square one within moments, and so the work has to keep continuing.
I'd also suggest putting a few pounds back on Amanda Waller.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes. I love your dress.
Oh, thank you.
It's gorgeous.
Thanks, panel.
Hi. Talking about the future of women in comics and what direction they can go in, I was wondering if you had a choice of something you'd like to see done with a female character, what would you like to see them do that you haven't seen them do specifically?
I know something they can't do is to allow the character to actually grow older. I know this was something that we debated in Buffy. How old was Buffy if we're going into season 8? And I always thought, well, it would be a short book, obviously, maybe 10, 15 years, but it would be interesting to take a comic book and do it over the period of 10, 15 years and actually let that character grow. And
yeah, they could do it with Batman.
That's a good one.
Okay, is that it? Okay.
I'd like to see. I don't think I could say this has never been done, but I'd like to see more women competing and remaining friends. I think that is a thing that I see in my regular life. Is like I have a lot of women friends, and we're very competitive and we're very driven, but we like don't miraculously break out into cat fights,
Jealous of each other.
Yeah, I think there's this thing like dudes are allowed to make each other better, and we're not like in pop culture, we're not represented that way. We're represented as like conniving and manipulative, and you know, we're really usually after the attention of a dude. I'm sort of over that.
Thank you for your question, sir.
Hi. First off, I love all of your work. It's amazing. It's kind of nerve-wracking asking this question. I wanted to ask you guys about weaknesses because, I mean, you're doing comic book heroes, and a big part of making it believable is having people with weaknesses, but you're also representing some, just even the entire population of people that are kind of pushed aside and kind of seen as a sexual symbol and whatnot. So how do you not overpower the women that you're writing about, I guess?
Yellow and wood.
I'm not really sure I understand your question. How do we not overpower?
How do you show the weaknesses without? How do you show the weaknesses? And like you are taking
Well, okay, now I think I get it. Let's just take Batgirl for instance, the new 52 Batgirl. Her story is about her overcoming some post-traumatic stress issues. So that's a weakness of hers. When she first gets a gun pulled on her, she completely freezes in the middle of a very dramatic situation. And in that book, she is constantly trying to overcome her weaknesses and fears and still do the right thing. So it's very prevalent in that book in particular. She's a super strong female character, but she's based in a reality where she's strong because she overcomes and or says, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm afraid, this person is in danger, and that supersedes my fear. And so it's constantly like that. Red Sonja has weaknesses, even though she could, you know, decapitate you at any moment, but that is also one of her weaknesses, is that she's very quick to temper and quick to drink and quick to everything, which may get her in trouble. You know, that's part of what makes a three-dimensional, well-rounded, interesting character to read, is that they're not all powerful. They need to have something to counterbalance that, to make them more identifiable, I think, in most cases.
Carol is an alcoholic, so she has that junkie brain thing where she's both, she's simultaneously incredibly arrogant and has huge self-esteem issues. And so she's like, she has this tendency to like go in guns blazing without really thinking the situation through, and she sort of thinks that she can handle everything. And she's wrong, and she doesn't like, she wants to be the one fixing everything, she wants to be the one helping everyone, and so she doesn't like to have to ask for help, so it doesn't make her the best team player in the universe.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hi, so this is actually directed towards the writers mostly, sorry about that, artists. I have a quick question. You guys are stepping into characters that have a lot of backstory, they have a lot of history in a lot of the verses, and sometimes they've been used as agents of man-pain, and they have backstories that aren't exactly realistic. How are you guys trying to like overcome that as trying to build a female character who's one, believable, and who can stand on her own without this history of having to lean on a guy? How are you guys able to kind of like overcome that? Is it slow, or do you guys have like carte blanche from your editors, stuff like that?
For me, I'll just give an example of when I was writing Wonder Woman. I really felt that her birth story was all bright and sunny and a happy day on a beach that, you know, takes place, everything's all rainbows and kitty cats. And I've given birth. I hate to let y'all know, that's not quite what it's like. So when I was writing Wonder Woman, it's the same, if you go back and read it, it's the same exact creation myth, but there's blood, there's pain, there's stress, there's fear, there's danger, there's all those things that are there in a real birth or a real creation, and it's very much from a woman or feminine point of view. And I think it made a lot of people at DC very uncomfortable. Because that was not what they expected. And if you go back and look at those Wonder Woman stories, it's a lot about she's proactive, she makes her own decisions, her adventures are not thrust upon her in any way. I mean, she's put, you know, she's in dangerous situations, but she is, you know, she chooses to go in and fight or not to fight or whatever decision she's making. It's very proactive. And these are the kinds of things that I look at when I'm dealing with a character that's been around for a long time. I don't think in Red Sonja's case that the rape story is very, I don't like it. I don't think it fits in our today's world. It gives her character problems that I don't like and that I don't want to write about. I don't feel that she should be a gift to be won or a prize to be won at a carnival. So those are the things that I'll go in and I'll just really get in there and twist them around or you know, make it so that in the story, even though I may not address that happened in her backstory, it's very clear that this is a new Red Sonja where she's no one's prize.
You know, I feel very supported at Marvel, I have to be honest with you. You know, I got a note recently and I was like, indignant, and I was like ready for a fight, you know, like I'd written a line that was like, have you ever seen a little girl run so fast she falls down? And I was talking about how there's a moment before she hits the ground, you know, when she sort of reached that maximum velocity where she flies. So like there's a moment where every little girl flies. And I got the note back and I was like, could we make it every little kid? Because we don't want to alienate the male reader. And I was like, no. Because dudes, I believe in your ability to see through our eyes. Because I know that female readers identify with male protagonists because we have to, because we don't have enough female protagonists. And so I know it can be done because I do it every day. So I know you can do it because you're awesome and amazing and you have good imaginations. And it's also good for you. And I'm a mother and I know these things. But yeah, so I was like, the note came in and I'm like rolling my sleeves up, like, you know, flipping a table. I'm gonna quit over this, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not changing it. And they're like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's been pretty great, and there's a lot of stuff in the backstories that, you know, one thing you could do, you could just totally wipe out her memory, so all of that stuff actually happened, but she doesn't remember it, and she could relearn who she is through the eyes of an 8-year-old girl who thinks she's on the moon. That'd be one way.
This is mostly for the writers, but to the artists as well. How, you were talking about the sexy lamp test earlier, and it was brought up how women were largely portrayed around the 70s, or superhero women rather, as being super bees. As writers, and somewhat as artists, how do you strike the balance between vacuous sex toy and super bee?
Not being a sex toy and what?
They told me I couldn't use the B word, so...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I curse too much. I'm sorry, you guys.
How hard do you find it straddling?
Just pretend they're people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that's just don't... Whatever woman you can imagine, like there's a woman like that. Like if it's really problematic, write them all like men and change the names. You know? I think that what happens is that, like, you know, for years and years and years, we only portrayed like these 4 archetypical women, you know, and like, but those women exist, but there's just this whole big other broad spectrum of women that exist too. So like, don't sweat it too much if you're asking it from a writer's perspective. Like if you're writing and you're like, well, how do I write a strong woman? Pretend she's a human being. I don't know. Just make sure, like, ask her something. No, and I don't mean to be. I'm sorry, I get sort of nasty. I'm trying to be funny, and that's a terrible thing to do. But there's nothing less funny than trying to be funny, surely. But no, really, get inside her head, get inside any character's head, and ask what they want in the scene. And if you work from the perspective of what they want, there's not going to be any wrong answer. There's going to be some boring answers, but none of them are going to be wrong. As long as she has agency, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, you need to figure out who this person is. You don't worry about stereotypes and archetypes. If you build a character properly, you're not going to have that. If you figure out in your mind what breaks that character's heart, what thing would utterly destroy them if it happened, then you know what kinds of things to put them up against. And then you figure out what they want, what their goals are, what their background is. All of those things, when you're building the character, that will inform you on how they speak, what decisions they're going to make when they're put into a situation. But you cannot be lazy. You have to do that work. It's, if you're going to be a hack, to use Kelly's word, or you're going to be lazy, then go ahead and use a stereotype. But if you don't want to be that kind of writer, then you have to do the character work to get there. And it takes time and thought and a lot of pieces fitting together.
One of the things I'm surprised about the most is how we've gotten really used to the dial being turned up to like way too sexy. And, that's, and we've all come to kind of roll our eyes.
There's a lot of different kinds of sexy too, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. And this has come up a lot lately, and the thing is we do have to speak out about it, and it's not as though when I'm drawing, if my hand slips, suddenly it's too sexy. There's a whole bunch of steps that get there. Okay, that is a thong that you just drew. These are, those breasts are too big. Like these are conscious decisions that someone's making, and there's many of them. And you don't just, do them by accident. So we have to, kind of...
I'm so tickled by that.
The sexy filter, it's Photoshop. It's the computer does it. So, as creators, I think it's important for us to kind of rein that in because it's just not. It doesn't help the stories, and it's important for everybody else to and ourselves to speak out about it and to say this is kind of ridiculous. So, let's just try to have respect for each other.
If you're creating a new character, don't recreate one that already exists. Please, I'm begging you.
So, that's a great question.
Thank you very much.
I have to be a little rude here, not with you, so you can sit down. I'm not being rude at you. You're lovely. But we only have like 4 minutes left, so we're going to be quick question. One more question. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Oh, they were sitting on the floor too.
Yeah, patiently. Well, anyway, let's see your question. It better be good, otherwise I'm going to hit you in the face.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I'm a big fan of yours, Gail. I grew up reading Sacred Six back in high school in 2008. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, looking back at the past of what you guys have done for female characters in comics, what would you most like to see in the New 52 with DC? What they could, what someone would, be willing to add to their interpretation of the character to add them, make them, a lot more stronger than they were in the old interpretations?
I can't answer that question too much. I'm so sorry because we do have plans on bringing new characters forward and this and that, but I just want variety. That is my main thing because I believe that the more variety we have in characters, the more readers we'll have, the more variety we'll get in creators, and it just becomes this great, thing for the entire industry. And also that we're not recreating stuff, that we're coming up with things that feel a little modern, that people can identify with. That's mostly what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So just because, can we have one last question just for the whole panel? Do you have one, miss? Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's it. I see you, Mr. Stern, timekeeper.
Hello. I'll make this quick. It's a really easy question. Do you think in the future that Marvel, DC, or some of the bigger independent ones could have a fat character who can actually do something and be a superhero? Or do they all have to just have like, said an athletic build? Can we have a fat superhero? Because I can do a lot.
You can also have fat athletes.
I'm 180.
You know, like I mean,
180 some pounds, and I can do a lot. I could probably kick a lot of butt. Woo! And I want to be able to come to convention dressed up without being the fat Poison Ivy or the fat Harley Quinn. I want to be able to be the character. So, do you think they'll run?
I do think so. I do think so, and that goes back to what I said before, the more variety of creators we have come in, because I literally have run into a couple times where I've asked for a character to be plumper, to look like they've been through a lot of female characters, look like they've been through a lot of fights, to be unattractive, to be those things, and they'll come back maybe bald with a scar, same body shape, same everything, or like I said earlier, they start out one way and as time goes on, more curvy, more, you know, so it's a matter of getting the people who do the visual stuff to be consistent as well, and I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah, when I did Buffy, Josh was very adamant about saying, look, all of the other Slayers, aside from Buffy, they have different body types, and there were heavy girls, and skinny girls, and tall girls, and short girls. So I was very conscious of that in drawing the series.
I find it pretty limiting, you know, like when you're asked to just draw these body types over and over again, and you know, I like to try and work it in wherever I can, especially, you know, when you're drawing like a lot of female characters. They should all look different, they should all feel different. One of the things I realized a few years ago was when, you know, I'm at a convention and someone asked me to draw Power Girl, and he said specifically, and make sure, you know, she's got the stuff. And
maybe the cape, right?
Right, the cape, yeah. The hair, you know. And I thought about it for a second. And the guy left, and I was just like, okay, well, you know, I got to give him what he asked for. But I guess he didn't ask for everything else that I drew. So the idea being that, you know, I ended up drawing her more like Maggie from Love and Rockets, I guess, you know, and it's just, we should have, yeah, like a believable body type, you know, and it was fun to draw.
Kelly? Nothing?
Do I think that, yes, I think that is a thing that could totally happen. And you know, have you ever seen somebody has put this compilation together of all these different Olympic bodies? Have you seen that? Yeah. And it is tremendous, you know, and there's an incredible wide range of what is a powerful athletic body, you know, and yeah, I would absolutely think that could happen. And in fact, you should probably pick up my next image book.
And Rick, anything?
I think that as the industry grows, as the public acceptance of the industry grows, I think we're going to see just about everything, and that's good. I can foresee a time when comics become the dominant form of literature, actually. But that's only going to happen if we diversify in every way we possibly can. That's our job, and I'm sure we'll do it.
Thank you.
That's